Alright, hello everyone, it's Happy, and today we're talking about which nations are the best in World of Tanks Blitz for newer players. So which nations you should really start with. Now if you're a newer player, you should definitely listen to this video. In my opinion, there are only a few nations a lot of players should start with. We've established that heavy tanks are the main class to play and to start with as a newer player because the other classes are hard. But today we're going to be specifically talking about the nations. Now, if we're going to look at heavy tanks, which nations have the easiest and best heavies to play? That is, of course, the Soviets, which is the IS-7, IS-4, and the German E100 line. This is simply it. The Germans and the Soviets, in my opinion, have the best tech trees for newer players, because even look at the TDs. You have the Object 268, you have the Object 140, you have the T62, T100 LT, you have the Mouse, you have the Yank Panzer E100, and so on and so forth. The only tank that is kind of hard to play on the German tech tree is probably the Leopard, but you have the E50M, which is probably great for newer players if they're trying to play mediums. If you're trying to play mediums, the T62 is also a great option, if you know what I mean. If you're trying to go for TDs, the Object 268 is another great option. And so these two would probably be the best nations to start with. In specific, the IS-7 and the E100 lines for the Soviets and Germans. If we look at French tanks, they have drums. This is far too hard for a newer player to learn. The British have a lot of hesh, like the FV215B, the Vickers Light, etc, etc. These tanks have hesh, and so newer players will more or less struggle because they don't know which areas to shoot. If we look at the French, as I said, we already have a lot of drums. Players need to know how to peek, when to push, etc, etc, and which positions to take in order to use these drums effectively. If we look at the European tech tree, we again have the TVP, the Kran, the Progetto. And so it becomes very, very hard for newer players to play these tanks. But if you go in, if you play an E100 or an IS-7, you literally sit in and just go into battle, smack someone for 640 and block a few shells with your armor. This is what a new player needs. He doesn't need to know how to use a drum, blah, 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 because he simply won't know these things. Now, again, the other tech trees, for example, the Chinese and the Japanese tech trees. The Japanese tanks, for example, the STB and the Hori, again, they're far too niche and specific. Do you think a player would know where to go with his STB and use a hold-on position? Of course not, of course not. The Hori, it's not super armored, you know, it's a TD after all. It's an okay TD, but for a newer player, I don't think so. I don't think so. Same with the Chinese tech tree. Maybe the 113 would be a good option, but again, the whole tech tree line is just pure agony. We have the medium tanks, which I would definitely not recommend. And why would you go for the Chinese TD, the VZ, when you literally have an Object 268, which is better in almost every single regard? Literally, the Soviets and the Germans are the best nations to start with as a Blitz player. I think I've said enough in this topic. Tell me what you guys think about this in the comment section below. And with that, Happy's out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.